Don't act like you're some big shot now, Emily, my dad scoffed, waving my paycheck in his hand like he owned it. 83% goes for your brother's education fee. The rest, 13%, is for you. You should be grateful I'm leaving you anything at all. Grateful. That word burned like acid in my throat. Hi everyone, my name is Emily Carter, I'm 25. And this was the moment I realized my father never saw me as a daughter, just as his second source of income. I still remember standing there, my hands trembling slightly, holding onto the edge of the kitchen counter as if it could stop the world from collapsing. The fluorescent light flickered above us. My mother avoided my eyes. My younger brother, Noah, smirked from behind his phone. Dad, I said softly, I worked for that money. I stayed up nights finishing projects. I pay my own rent. He slammed his palm on the counter. Don't talk back to me. You owe this family everything. Without us, you'd still be a useless girl with a useless degree. Something inside me cracked, not loudly but cleanly like glass under slow pressure. Noah leaned against the fridge, pretending to be casual. You don't need all that money anyway, I'll make something of myself. You'll just keep working. I wanted to scream. Instead I whispered, no. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting could ever be. My father's eyes hardened, his face twisting with rage. Then pack your things. You're out of this house tonight. My mother gasped but said nothing. He never did. I remember walking to my room, the air thick with humiliation and disbelief. The walls still had the same photographs from my school days. Awards, certificates, dreams that once made him proud. Now they meant nothing. I packed one suitcase. My mother slipped a note into my hand. I'm sorry, but you know how he is. Outside, the night was cold and the streetlight hummed above me. I looked back once. Through the window, my father was counting bills from my paycheck. That image never left me. Because that night I promised myself one thing. I'd build a life so complete that one day, they'd have no choice but to knock on my door. The first night after he kicked me out, I slept in a small motel room with flickering lights and walls thin enough to hear the arguments next door. I placed my single suitcase beside the bed, stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "You'll never beg again, Emily." The next morning, I walked miles to a diner that had a help wanted sign. The manager, a woman named Rosa, looked me over with tired kindness. You can start tonight, she said. Pays not much, but it's honest. Those words, honest pay, felt like healing. I worked 12-hour shifts serving coffee to strangers, smiling through exhaustion. I saved every dollar, every coin. Some nights I'd eat leftovers, too proud to ask anyone for help. I rented a small studio apartment months later. One window, one dream, and one mattress on the floor. Each paycheck reminded me of my father's voice, 83%. And every time I told myself, no one takes a percent of me again. Over the years I studied after work, learned coding online, and built small freelance projects that slowly turned into contracts. I remember the first time I made $10,000 in a month. I sat in silence, tears rolling down my cheeks. Not because of pride, but because it meant I was finally free. Noah used to post pictures from college, the college I was forced to fund. Expensive parties, designer shoes, new car. My father commented on every post, proud of my son. Not a word for me. So I stayed quiet. Because revenge, I learned, doesn't need noise. It just needs time. One evening I got an email from a top software firm. They wanted to partner with me for a new project. Something that could change my life. And as I signed that contract, I smiled faintly. Some debts, I thought, don't need to be collected with anger. They're collected through success. What I didn't know then was that success would soon bring my family back to my doorstep, broke, desperate, and unrecognizable. 3 years passed before I saw my family again. By then I wasn't the girl who left that night, trembling, humiliated, broken. I had built my own company, Carter Solutions, specializing in digital automation. My small apartment had turned into a sleek office with employees who looked up to me, not down. But fate has a strange way of circling back. One rainy evening I heard a knock on my door. Not a gentle one, desperate, uneven, like someone clinging to hope. When I opened it, I froze. My father stood there. His shirt clung to him from the rain. My mother stood behind him, clutching her purse. And Noah, he looked nothing like the arrogant boy I remembered. His clothes were wrinkled, eyes hollow, and his once expensive watch was missing. Emily, my mother started softly, We didn't know who else to come to. I stayed silent. The sound of rain filled the space between us. My father cleared his throat, his tone far less commanding than before. We're in some financial trouble, he said. Your brother's business failed. We need some help. Just until we get back on our feet. It was surreal, watching the same man who once threw me out now stand before me asking for money. His eyes darted around the room, trying to find something familiar in the daughter he never understood. I gestured toward the sofa. You can sit, I said quietly. My voice was calm, but my heart raced with every memory he'd buried. They sat awkwardly, dripping rainwater on the marble floor. My father's pride was dying in front of me. How much do you need? I asked finally. He hesitated. 83% of what you can spare. The irony was too poetic to ignore. I looked at him steadily. 83%, huh? Some numbers never change. He blinked, not catching the weight in my voice. But Noah did. His head dropped in shame. That night, I realized revenge doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just walks in soaking wet asking for help. The silence after his request was almost cinematic. The rain outside tapped against the windows, steady and cold, like the rhythm of my heartbeat. My father's words replayed in my head. 83% of what you can spare. I leaned back in my chair, studying their faces. My father looked older, wrinkles deeper, eyes weary. My mother's hands twisted nervously in her lap. And Noah. He looked defeated, the arrogance replaced by something I'd never seen in him before. Fear. What happened to the business? I asked. Noah's voice cracked. Bad investments. Some debts. I thought I could handle it, but... He trailed off, staring at the floor. And the house. I pressed. My mother whispered, gone. I nodded slowly. So, after all these years you're here. For help. From me. My father straightened, still clinging to the shreds of his pride. You're still our daughter, Emily. Families forgive. The word forgive hit me like thunder. I smiled, not bitterly, just quietly. Funny. When I was kicked out, I don't remember any forgiveness then. He looked away. We all said things we didn't mean. No, I said softly. You said exactly what you meant. The air grew heavier. The smell of rain mixed with old guilt lingered in the room. Finally, I stood up. Here's what I'll do, I said, walking to my desk. I opened a drawer, took out a checkbook, and began writing, slow, deliberate strokes. They all leaned forward, hope flickering. I tore the check and placed it on the table. My father reached for it, but froze when he saw the amount. 13%. Exactly what they once allowed me. This, I said quietly, is what you thought I was worth. Maybe now you'll understand what that feels like. Noah whispered, Emily, please. Dad didn't mean. But I'd already turned away, walking toward the window. The rain had stopped. The city lights reflected against the glass like tiny fragments of freedom. I think, I said calmly, we're finally even. No one spoke for several seconds after my words. The sound of the rain had stopped, but the silence it left behind was louder than any thunder. My father stared at the check, the same 13% he once threw at me as if it were mercy. He clenched his jaw. You're being cruel, Emily. I turned slowly. No, Dad. I'm being fair. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Please, sweetheart, your brother's sick. He's been through so much. I cut her off gently. And where was this sympathy when I was walking alone in the rain with a suitcase? Noah buried his face in his hands. I messed up. I know that. I just need time. I wanted to hate him. I wanted the old fire, the same anger that used to consume me, to come roaring back. But instead I felt something strange. Calm. Time, I said quietly. That's the one thing I can't buy for you, Noah. You had years of mine already. My father stood up suddenly, his voice cracking. You think money makes you better than us? I looked at him for a long moment. No. Money didn't make me better. It made me free. You could have had that too if you'd ever treated me as your equal. He froze. For the first time I saw something break behind his anger. Shame. My mother stood, touching my arm gently. We'll go, she whispered. We shouldn't have come. When they reached the door, I felt an ache twist inside me. Not guilt, but grief for the family that could have been. Mom, I called softly. She turned, eyes hopeful. Take it, I said, nodding to the check. Not for him. For you. Her lips trembled as she picked it up. Thank you, Emily. After they left, I stood in the quiet room listening to my own breathing. The storm outside had passed, but inside something had just begun to settle. Something long overdue. Because sometimes peace isn't forgiveness. It's finally letting the silence speak for you. Days turned into weeks after they left, but their presence lingered, like dust in sunlight, impossible to ignore. Every knock at the door made my heart jolt for a second before I reminded myself they were gone. Then one morning I received a letter. No return address, just my name written in shaky handwriting I instantly recognized. My mother's. I sat at my desk and unfolded it slowly. Emily, your father hasn't been the same since that night. He doesn't talk much anymore. I think he finally understands what he did. Noah's been trying to find work, but it's been hard. We're staying in a small rented place now. I know you owe us nothing, but I needed you to know we're sorry. My fingers traced the words. The apology was years late, but for the first time it felt sincere. I looked out my office window. The city stretched endlessly, a skyline I'd conquered through grit and solitude. I should have felt victorious, but instead I felt tired. Later that evening, as my assistant brought in contracts, I noticed one file stamped with a familiar name. Noah Carter, it read. My heart skipped. He'd applied for a junior position in one of our partner firms, the kind that barely paid enough to cover rent. My first instinct was to reject it. But something in me hesitated. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the image of him as a boy, laughing, carefree, the world still kind to us both. Before the comparisons, before the resentment, before the word worth started dividing us. The next morning I made a call. If Noah Carter shows up for his interview, I told HR, don't tell him I referred him. Just give him a fair chance. It wasn't forgiveness. Not really. It was something quieter, a release. Because sometimes true revenge isn't watching them fall. It's knowing you can help them rise, without losing yourself in the process. A week later I got an email from the partner company. Noah Carter. Interview completed. Applicant showed potential but lacks confidence. Recommend mentorship. I stared at the screen for a long time. Potential but lacks confidence. That line felt like a mirror of what I once was before being told my worth in percentages. That evening I received another message, this time from Noah himself. A single line. Thank you, whoever helped me. I know it was you. I exhaled slowly. For the first time in years, his tone carried humility instead of entitlement. 2 months later I saw him again. Not at my door this time, but at a tech conference my company sponsored. He was thinner, quieter, but there was something different in his eyes. Focus. When he spotted me, he froze. Then cautiously he walked over. Emily, he said, voice soft. I didn't know you'd be here. I smiled faintly. I'm everywhere hard work lives. He laughed quietly, the first real laugh I'd heard from him in years. I deserved everything you said that night, he admitted. And maybe more. But, thank you. For helping me when you didn't have to. I nodded. You're welcome, Noah. I didn't do it for you. I did it for the part of me that still believes people can change. He looked down. Dad's sick. Mom's taking care of him. He still can't look at himself in the mirror. The words landed heavier than I expected. I paused before answering. Tell him. I hope he learns peace before it's too late. Noah nodded, eyes glassy. He asks about you, you know. Says he was wrong. For years I'd imagined that moment. Him admitting it. But now that it was real I felt no triumph. Just closure. As Noah walked away into the crowd, I realized revenge wasn't about destruction anymore. It was about freedom. And I was finally free. It was a quiet Sunday morning when it happened. A knock on my door that carried the same rhythm as years ago. I opened it slowly, half expecting ghosts from my past. But this time it wasn't anger or demand waiting on the other side. It was my mother, her eyes gentle, a small paper bag in her hands. Your father passed last night, she said softly. Peacefully. He asked me to give you this. Inside the bag was an old photograph. Me at 10 years old holding my first school award and his handwriting on the back. For my daughter who makes me proud, always. I sat down, the weight of years collapsing into one silent tear. All the arguments, all the percentages, all the bitterness, suddenly felt so small. He kept that photo, my mother whispered. Every day. He just never knew how to say sorry. We sat there in silence, two women shaped by one man's pride. Then I reached for her hand. "Stay for breakfast, Mom." She smiled weakly. "I'd like that." As we ate, I noticed how her eyes softened when she looked around the apartment. The life I'd built from rejection, pain, and perseverance. When she left, she hugged me tightly. "You made it, Emily. You really did." After she was gone, I walked to the same window I once stared through on my first night of freedom. The city looked different now, calmer, quieter, almost forgiving. I thought about my father's last years, about Noah trying to start over, about how pain can either destroy or refine you. And in that stillness I finally understood something I never did before. Revenge wasn't about making them kneel. It was about standing tall with grace. I folded the photograph, placed it on my desk beside a new frame, and whispered to the girl in it, "You did it. You kept your promise." Outside, a soft breeze pushed the curtains aside, like a curtain call.